Hello, and welcome to Attunement. In this podcast, I, with the help of some of my powerful friends, will be exploring healing personal, intergenerational, and collective wounds, the side effects of oppressive power structures, activation of connection to spirit, oneness and awareness, and the intersectionality of it all. Let's connect the dots. Welcome to Attunement. We're in another episode today. I have the incredible Aja Monet here with us, one of the most prolific writers, authors, expressors of our time. I feel like currently, because I think she's badass on time, because she's also an organizer and just incredible connector of human beings, like a generator, orchestrator of vibrations, and a really good fucking friend. So welcome, Aja.
Oh, thank you. Those are all very lovely things. I felt really seen in your description of me, so thank you.
Good. Yeah, you're so special, and I'm so grateful that you're here to share it with us, to educate us, most likely, because everything that comes out your mouth is just beautiful poetry. um,
I wish.
no, for real though, like genuinely. But yeah, how are you? You were just telling me that you were working on some projects. I would love to hear about what you're exploring right now, because I know obviously you've shared your poetry with us. You've shared some of your poetry over some music, like we were talking about. But yeah, tell us about how you like to express yourself in the world and what you feel like your ethos and message is at its root level.
Yeah, I call myself oftentimes the way I describe myself is as a surrealist blues poet.
Yes.
And the reason why I feel like that best encapsulates who I am is because I think everything starts with the blues, the origin of, I feel, music uh, in this
Yeah.
region is comes from the blues. And as a poet that is definitely concerned with the musicality and um, the substance and the soul of who we are, what we've been through, and where we're going, and what our aspirations or visions are. I think the blues has always been a place where one could express that part of themselves. But
Yes.
my concern is always poetry. Poetry is more of a way of life, a way of seeing, a way of using language, and it's really about truth telling and meaning and depth and how one can create meaning and depth. And then when I think about surrealism, I love surrealism because it allows us to kind of turn reality on its head and think about the absurd and what essentially makes us absurd,
Right. You
the
use
many
our
ways,
imaginations a little bit.
yeah, and the many ways that we can be subversive and lean into um alternate realities or perceptions, the dimensions of existing. And it's a political orientation, surrealists, and what surrealism was about was really upending how we function and how we currently or how we have so far organized ourselves and governed. And so I think leaning into the imagination and the unseen and the invisible, and knowing that there's so much information and there's so much knowledge for us to pull from. There's so much that we've yet to explore within ourselves. I think is excites me, and I think that that is part of the poet's journey, is leaning into that exploration,
Yeah.
um, and the vulnerability of that, the honest places we can go when we're being and moving from a place of vulnerability. Yeah, so that's what I
I
call myself.
just,
And then I guess
I'm
in terms of,
snapping over here.
I don't know if that really answers about projects
Yes,
and
it
stuff, but
does. It does
I
kind of. Well, it's a good setup for like how you choose. Like I said, your expression and how you're choosing to what you're choosing to share with the world. First of all, I
yeah,
really deeply resonate with what you just said about the surrealism and the nature of expressing from those deep soul places. Like I feel you deeply. I love I definitely identify with the surrealist energy because the way things are moving and flowing on this planet, I feel like we need a lot of surrealist artists to come to the surface, and just explore their imaginations and give from their authenticity, And I feel like
Yeah.
that's exactly what you do through your art. Is just a raw expression of like what you go through and how you see the world, especially politically.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And when I think about how that shows up, there's many ways that a creative can express themselves. And for me,
Yeah, I feel
as a
that.
poet, yeah, as a poet, it's kind of many times people think, oh, well, if you're a poet, that you're just good at writing or speaking words. And I think the best poets, poetry is a metric or a measure of one's dedication, commitment to their craft. And so if you dance like a poet, if you sing like a poet, if you cook like a
Yep.
poet, it
Yep.
really, when someone says that, that means that you are you have a level of expertise, but also dedication and love and passion towards what you're doing that
Yeah.
transcends the actual doing. And so everything I do has the element of poetry in it when I think about whether or not I'm organizing and trying to get people mobilized around a specific action in our communities to change the material conditions of our lives, whether that be voting in someone or into office, or which I don't always like to to be a part of that phase of the work, but
Yeah, I
get
feel that.
advocating for a policy, getting people to defending people's rights,
Human
mobilizing
rights.
around getting people out of jail, getting people representation, whether they be trying to be evicted, people trying to evict folks, or getting someone housing. There's many different ways that the work shows up.
Yeah.
One of the biggest ways was using poetry to be supportive tool for organizers who are grappling with their own interior worlds and their struggles, and seeing that poetry could be a useful resource to those who have committed their lives to helping to change our world for a better place and our society for a better place. That we need to see art and the practice of art, the process of making art, is really a great organizing strategy. And so, how do
Yeah,
I?
absolutely.
Yeah. So how do I democratize access to art for people? That's been something I've worked on. I have poetry books, which is really one of my passions, is writing poems and spending time reading and listening to poetry, and then working with music, and now taking the poetry, expanding the poetry, and moving and shaping the poetry in different spaces. I've been directing recently, working on short film, and
Yes.
yeah, and then I directed an audio play.
Asha.
That's Yeah, for a bunch of women. We went to Ghana and we launched this play
Yes, I remember
to,
that.
yeah, to help advocate and amplify voices of African women of the diaspora and the continent. So those are, you know, just a few things.
Yeah, just a couple things that I'm doing in the world. Wow. Uh, I really truly just admire the way that you think and move. Uh, I like so deeply. And yeah, it's very inspiring to me. And I hope to just continue to align with what I learned from you. Um, and just like do continue to move even better, and just like understand all of the ways that art can fluctuate through society beyond like the mainstream, or like moving with these intentions of trying to reach these accolades, or like like be in certain spaces when there's so many ways that art impacts every single day and can expand people's vision of themselves. And essentially I feel like the expansion that we're going through all together right now, in these times, and elevating consciously and just moving through to more expansive ways of being together on this planet. I feel like art is such a vehicle to that connection, and through consuming it from one another and also experiencing it and using it to get out our own truths, and to be sharing those truths with one another.
Mm, yeah. I don't even know what to
Yeah.
respond to that.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, just a thought.
yeah, I think that I find myself gravitating towards artists who I just gravitate towards people who see or move in the world as artists, even if they might not call themselves artists.
Yeah.
Um, and know that authentic expression is really necessary for us to heal and grow the way that we want to in the world.
Yeah.
Um, and I think about the need, I have my own personal struggles in life, and I know that everyone is. I mean, it's a really hard time. There's a lot of things that people are really struggling through, and I think that art is a place where we meet for compassion and for grappling with some of the greatest questions of life, which is
Yeah. And
what does it mean?
refuge and escaping.
Yeah, but the biggest things are what does it mean to love and
Mm,
how do we deal with loss?
yeah.
And I think that we're all negotiating our relationship to, ourselves, our health, our well-being, but then the real conditions that this system has set up for us, and that many of us just continue to abide by.
Right.
Um, but it's not enough. And I think the more that we create access for people to get in touch with themselves and learn their spiritual, truest, most authentic, loving, capabilities or capacity, I think then we start to create a sort of environment or world that demands a better system, demands a different system, demands the uprooting of all systems. And so I think uh,
Absolutely.
that's what makes art so powerful, so dangerous, is that
Yeah.
when artists are really going there and exploring, experimenting with, um, yeah, with their own deep secrets and selves, they give a blueprint for someone else
Yeah.
to do the same, you know?
Open those portals up into transformation and transcendence for sure.
Yeah. Do you feel like you see yourself in that way?
I absolutely do. If I'm being honest, I feel that every time that I go on tour or something and I really get to connect with the fans and or the people who support the music, like I really feel the shifts that we create in one another even, because I've also been able to expand so much through that connection and through connecting with people through art and music. Like I said, you're also like a curator of spaces and vibrations and people, and I feel like every time that we hang out, I expand, like like there's ways that when you understand the impact that you have on somebody, and you see yourself reflected back in each other, I feel like that's what music does. It just puts us all in spaces that it doesn't matter who you're around, age, gender, religion, race, it doesn't matter. Like everyone's enjoying the vibration that that person's putting out, or resonating with the vibration that that person's putting out for whatever reason. And they're singing the words back for whatever reason, but all for their own reason and their own truths and stories. So I feel deeply that exactly what you're saying, that the healing and the expansion and all of that comes from exploring ourselves. And I feel like artists have always been at the forefront of the revolution, which I feel like now is more of the mind and of the spirit than anything else, that we're seeing. Obviously, there's a lot happening in the physical world that we're seeing and experiencing, but I feel like what we're really gonna what we're really exploring right now is going, like you said, going within and figuring out those truths and those dark secrets and those parts of ourselves that we maybe haven't looked at or loved enough or weren't loved, so we've shunned them, like into the shadows. And I feel like that's what artists do. We explore those worlds and we explore the darker sides, the more taboo sides, and also the stuff that everyone can relate to, so we can all see things clearly.
Mm. Yeah.
or clearer.
Yeah. I think there's a lot changing. There's so much that we don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so much that has yet to be fully explored. And so whilst, I'm I used to not feel this way, but I'm getting better at recognizing that it doesn't serve any of us to put a binary on the optics of our current reality. So whether that be this is all good or all bad, or this is
Right.
all right or all wrong, I think that what I've noticed about life is that things work in balance, and sometimes human beings are so entitled.
Yeah.
Um, we believe our lives are the most important lives, or we don't care enough about our lives and we feel that they're too insignificant. So
Wreak
we
havoc
move we move without any responsibility or accountability to the impact of our decisions on other people.
and on the environment.
Um, so yeah, I find myself just being trying to be present with where what how things show up in my body, how do I feel, and what can I do? What am I actually capable of doing about the current moment that I'm meeting? Every moment is an opportunity to approach and to receive new understanding, and new awareness or awakening. And so I just feel that these moments, these times can be really, really discouraging, when we think about just the over emphasis on information and what is happening all over the world. One community here, one community there. Learning about what happened in Turkey and Syria the other day. I mean, it's terrifying and
Yeah.
sobering, but
So many
also,
people.
yeah, it's a lot of people, and but we're all responsible. We're all responsible for showing up and doing better and taking care of this planet, because clearly the decisions that we make are going to impact other people, and it's not going to be just somebody's feelings or how somebody identifies. It's going to be life or
Right.
death. And I think that
Literally.
we have a responsibility to show up better to each other. So, that's really where my presence has been, is like, how do I meet the moment, and what can I do in this moment to be my most present, aware self? Um,
I meet the moment. That's beautiful.
yeah, and hopefully some folks will meet it with me. So hopefully people will meet it with us, because no
Yeah.
change happens in isolation. We need collective participation. We need each other. We can't do this life thing alone. It is literally a tribe vibe.
Yeah,
It's
it is a collective thing. And I feel like we've also been so indoctrinated by individualism, especially in America. Like there's this very like energy of we're the like we single ourselves out as some as superior. Like it's this mentality where like and then I feel like that trickles down into the individual as well. And so there's just this very separate mentality, very centered on self. And while it's important to develop the self and to become aware of the self and to dive into the self in order to express, you know, I feel like it's also really important, like you said, to think about impact and think about ourselves as one, and to understand that every single which way that we're moving, it's happening symbiotically. But like you said, there's always going to be a balance, I think. But then I've been I've been deep diving into all kinds of spaces these past few days, and there's this woman named, oh my god, what is her name? Dang it, Dolores something. Is it Dolores? Dolores Cannon. Have you ever heard of Dolores Cannon?
mm-mm,
Okay, well, she's this woman who like connects with these these beings called the collective. This kind of like, far out here, but like get my drift. Just go walk with me for a moment. But
mm-hmm,
basically the whole entire premise is that we are love, we come from love, we're here to rediscover love, and just the humans are kind of trying to figure it all out. But they're not allowed to interfere. They just kind of are here to they kind of watch what we're doing and see if with our free will we're able to make it work, and evidently not destroy ourselves. And
Mm,
so I feel like a huge part of that process is these beings of light who come in to help guide humanity. And I really deeply feel that artists are those people, And when we come together and we generate together and when we move together and when we strategize together, organize together, and really because we're visualizers, right? We can visualize a different reality where we don't have to exist in these fear frequency, low vibrational energies. We can genuinely move towards a new reality where we take care of one another intentionally, and we create systems around us, by us, for us, that allow for that, for everybody to thrive, because it's possible, because we live in a reality of abundance, and the scarcity mentality was created so that we fought each other for resources that they have an abundance of because they control it.
mm.
And it's so important for us to attune ourselves to our truths. Attunement, shout out attunement. The name of the podcast. But yeah, like, it's so important for us to attune ourselves to our truths so that we can all be on that collective tip of waking ourselves the fuck up from all this, from this mentality of disaster, that we consistently live in, and the physical ramifications of those mentalities, because these systems are still alive and well and operating in a very destructive manner.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I'd be thinking about all sorts of forms of perception about this time. Like,
Yeah,
sometimes
right.
I'm like, "Oh, this feels very negative, or this feels very down, or this feels like this is the end of this world, or this phase, or this thought." And then I'm like, "Well, when there's an end, there's always a beginning." So
Yeah,
it's never I try to think about just there's so much I don't know. There's so much I don't know. There's so many parts of this world that have yet to be explored, experienced, or realized. And while the dread of one community's uh downfall or despair, right, is a real thing, there are other communities that are existing and living and loving and creating in so many other ways and forms. And I'm seeking and I'm interested in, where is that? What are we capable of? What is possible? Um, what else is there to us outside of just consumption and, you know,
destruction.
and destruction? Yeah, and also knowing that a lot of things we are programmed to believe we're only capable of a certain way, and people move in the world based on their conditions and their environment.
Right,
So
right, which
when
is
I
valid.
think about, yeah, so when I
You
think
know what
about
else I've been exploring that I feel like is kind of a solution, and I'm kind of whatever. We'll see what happens because we're still in these processes of, but psychedelics and connection with psychedelics and the way that they open and expand people and help heal people from even like PTSD and the kind of mental imbalances that cause people to potentially be violent or not be violent. You know what I mean? There's all kind. I mean, obviously, everybody experiences things differently, but you know, a lot of people I feel like are traumatized to the point where they can't really move the way that they want to, and they feel like they're being controlled by something else and like their own traumas. And I feel like that's really valid for a lot of people because there's a lot of lovelessness and abuse that goes on in our country, especially towards children. Because they don't really have any rights or like, and I feel like it's different for everybody too, like the gravity of the experience and how deeply traumatized people get along the way. But the way that psychedelics can help and open and expand people, I feel like there's a connection there for some reason, and how we can get further along faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know that we necessarily need to depend on psychedelics in that way. However, I know that
You're
we
right.
are
I've
we are
just
in a
been
yeah, let me say this real quick. I think we're in a crisis of consciousness, and I think we are capable of far greater things than we know. I do think that sacred medicine has a place and a role in our evolution and in our elevation of being and ways of seeing. I think that that
yeah,
requires, though, a certain sense of community and a commitment to um, accountability within that community. And I think that what's dangerous is that folks are seeing, are using sacred medicine as a way of escapism
yeah,
and um, recognizing that we are multidimensional beings and creatures. And so there are places that one can tap into just off of breath work, just off
yeah,
of allowing people to sit with their breaths more and be present. And I think we can only do that if we create a society that, if we organize for a society that allows people to have access to rest and equitable wages for their labor and, you know, uh,
yeah,
decent, decent hours in the day to work where they aren't being, enslaved is
yeah.
essentially um,
Exploded.
to their jobs. So I think there's a lot for us to create from, and we are far more powerful, far more abundant than we would like to lead people to believe. And I think when people are in despair and they're hurt, it's when they lean on um, their trauma responses and oftentimes take out their frustrations, anger, pain, anxiety, etc., on others. And
Yeah,
so we see ourselves in a place where, oh, well, of course, we have to, do something about this. There has to be some individual responsibility and accountability to one's actions. While individualism is not the answer, there does need to be individual accountability to the collective.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people are getting away with saying, well, oh, I went through this and this was, so this is why I show up the world this way. And I was traumatized in this way. And this is how people treated me. And
yeah,
yeah, that's a reality. It shapes how we exist. But at what point do we decide to become and do differently? At what point do we say enough is enough? I'm not going to continue to perpetuate and participate in this narrative of trauma, in this ecosystem of the economy of trauma, the economy of pain. And so I think that there has to be a commitment for all of us to really show up better for ourselves so that we can be, be a part of a collective. We can be able to participate. And then we can make demands on the collective agreements that we say there are, because
yeah,
everything in society, law and how law dictates society is based on a set of agreements that
yeah.
people have placed before us and said, and we have said, and we've also subscribed to those agreements. But we can always renegotiate those agreements, and that's the greatest illusion of this current iteration of society, that somehow what is agreed to is set in stone and cannot change, that what the ways that laws have been shaped and done and made are given,
Set in stone. Yeah,
are inherited in our society. That's it. And I think that so long as we are human beings relating to each other, we have the capacity to love, to nurture, to care, to change, to grow, to
shift.
yeah, to shift, to create all new alternatives. And so I would love, I'm interested and I'm excited about what are the new agreements we are creating together. What are the ways that we decide to show up for each other? That's exciting to me.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And how do we get in those kind of conversations and spaces? I think is the most like to make those agreements together because I feel like we're so I feel like the collective is so beyond tired of the same kind of cyclical responses from what we call government at this point. And it's like we're all so hyper aware of what how they move and why they move the way that they do, and this whole capitalistic structure has just been so exploitative. And I feel like over the past 3 years that we've collectively been experiencing just the real true level of greed that's possible, even when everything is just moving so. I mean, it's always been there, to be fair. It's not like it's new, but it's just, I feel it was so in our face when we all collectively went through this pandemic situation together. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know where do we have these conversations and where do we have these agreements made so that we can really start moving things collectively? Because I feel like there's so much more of us ready to see something new and to create something new together. You know?
Well, I think I'm starting to move from the place of just conversation to action. And I'm interested in what we're doing. While a conversation is an
Yeah.
action, I think that it isn't enough. I think a lot of people, there was a time where that was the mark of, you know, an effort towards success. But I think movements and efforts to change have phases, right? There's like, when you think about someone that is enslaved or someone that is going through great oppression and persecution, there are phases to the liberation process. There are ways in which, taking the shackle off is just one part of it. Then
Yeah.
there's the physical reality of having the shackle. There's the getting out of the jail. There's multiple layers to what people are holding and carrying. And so, a conversation's one phase of the process, but then what do we do beyond the conversation? I think rhetoric, a lot of people are very much inspired by the aesthetic of change and the aesthetic of activism and, you
Right.
know, liberation aesthetic. But I think we need to see what are the actual values that people have and what are people's political homes. My friend Derica Purnell is an incredible thinker, artist, like artist of words. I don't know if she would consider herself an artist, but I think she is. She's a writer, scholar, lawyer, and she talks about political homes and
Okay.
how we need to be a part of political homes that essentially are places where we can go to be in discussion and struggle with one another and struggle with ideas, to be reading together, to be arguing together, and to be doing the work that is necessary for the visions that we claim we want to see, so that
Right.
we're not just speaking and talking all the time and just,
Or
you know,
choosing between lesser evils all the time.
well, yeah, but so that we're accountable and that our rhetoric is backed by action and by
Yeah.
organizing, by
Yeah.
actual shit to organize the conditions of our lives. So it's one thing to say, "Oh yeah, like I want people to have fair wages." It's another thing to create new economic systems where, whether that be in your own practices among you and your friends, or whether that be within you and the company you work for, whether that be how you implement, conversations in your family around distribution of money, resources, groceries, etc. There are ways that we can practice and enact the very things we claim to value and see on a day to day. And so I think interrogating ourselves and continuing to examine, like, wait, how am I showing up? Is this in alignment with the thing that I say I care about? Am I
Yeah.
actually, it's not just in how I speak and what I say when it's a great opportunity, but how does it show up in my contracts with my friend, with my partners, with, companies I work with? How does it show up in the ways that I enter spaces and the things I agree to do and say I'm going to do? Really implementing it into the quality of life, into the way of life, so that then it's not impossible and it's not unattainable, but it becomes the standard and becomes the expectation. So every space you walk into, now you are the metric of those values. And someone can say, oh, wow, if so and so can do that, then I can do that. That's possible. I want to
Uh,
be a part of that way of being or that way of moving. And I think that creating community around the values that we we share is so important. And so then it leads to deeper, it's just a deeper sense of connected and awareness when it's not just a conversation. Now it's actually a form of communication. It's a way of connecting. It's how we connect. And so we connect on these values, and these are the things that we are going to show we care about based on how we show up in the world, how we decide to move together, even when I'm not in the same room with somebody who thinks like me, especially when I'm not in the room with somebody who thinks like me. How
Right.
do I show up with someone who disagrees or doesn't see things the way I see? How do I hold myself accountable to those values? And I don't need to get them to agree with me fully, but we do need to set aside a level of agreement by which I can engage. Because if we don't have an agreement around how I can engage, then I need to walk out of the room. I need to leave the room. I need to leave this space that does not value my values. And I think
Yeah.
that that's the constant negotiation we're in.
Con-
Oftentimes people, yeah, oftentimes people continue to stay in spaces and collaborate and work with people who do not share their values.
that
And they
is real.
claim to be about the thing they say they're about, but they don't really hold people to the fire when it comes to the times that matter and say, hey, this is something that really matters to me, not because it's rhetoric and not because it just makes me feel good and it's cute to say, but because I know the implications of what we're doing. I know what's possible. I know what we're capable of doing if we do this the right way or if we do this with intention.
Yeah. That is so real. And I feel like, especially in these like pre-established industries, like the music industry or like, or especially the entertainment industry is that's what I can speak to, of course, because that's what I've been in. But I feel like this is across industries. It's just like there's these established people or players or, you know, ways of doing things that are just very much against value systems, but everyone is willing to negotiate their own value systems in order to be a part of the bigger picture, you know? And I feel
Mm,
like happens too often, and that's why these systems don't change, is because it's everyone is too afraid, you know I mean, myself included. I've been in this industry, and I've definitely been in spaces that that speaks to, and that's not necessarily meaning that I've compromised my own values, but I've seen it very firsthand, people compromising their own values, or places existing that you have to compromise certain things that you feel or think in order to fit in these spaces or be a part of these spaces. um and I feel like that maintenance is the maintenance of the status quo, essentially.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
agree wholeheartedly on that being the shift. The tangible shift that we can make and see in our everyday lives is focusing in on maintaining and holding true to our own values, especially when we're in spaces where those don't align with who's around us, and bringing that energy and frequency into those spaces and being a part of the shift.
And deciding to create alternative spaces,
That
saying, hey,
that
if this place is not going to, if this is clearly not in alignment with me. And so what do I need to create in order so that I'm in alignment with me, I'm
that's
better
why
in alignment with me.
endings.
Yeah. And so I think what's cool too is that, artists have a lot of power,
We
and I think
do. We
the
really
narrative,
do.
the narrative of like, oh, the industry this, the industry that, and like, yes, it's clearly, it is vicious, but a lot of it's vicious because we subscribe to its viciousness. We
Exactly.
continue to perpetuate, and we believe that that is the only mode of being and that is the norm, when really it's not. It's a subsidy. It's not a subsidy. It's like a subset. It's like not even the reality. It's literally just what they've, the illusion. It's
Created.
glasses. It's the glasses, or
Yeah.
the blinders over the eyes. So I think
Yeah.
once you lift the blinders and you start to see, your art, if you are an artist that I think is in the realm or in the business of doing what art, the best art does, is I think it becomes impossible to stay around certain spaces that are not in alignment with you.
It is. It
You
truly is.
you see so many artists either go crazy, go to drugs, go to
Drugs.
different forms of escapism, or they completely leave the industry altogether and they value other parts of themselves more than that specific gift of that they have, that offering
Yeah.
that they start to recognize they have so much more to offer. And I think that that is the best way to live, is that art is not about one product that you're trying to share with people to consume, but it's about the process, and it's about who you get to be in that process, and
Yeah.
what you choose to share from that process is the best way forward. So how do I integrate my artistry in all facets of my life, and not just for the sake of the consumption of one's, you know, literally artistic residue, because that's what a song is. It's not actually, when you write a love song, no one's going to truly know what it took to make that love song but you. And it's
Yeah.
only someone who is in that experience of love and living love that will ever truly understand what it took to make that love song, which is why so many of us listen to love songs and we don't fully get them until we actually are in loving relationships, or we've lost relationships, because then we start to feel
Tell
like,
me
oh
about
wow,
it.
I get the process. I get what it took, what sort of brokenness, what sort of openness it took for someone to get to this point, that this is what they had to create. They had no other option. Nothing else could have ever possibly explained or, rectified or reckoned with that experience except this song. And
Yeah.
that's what the greatest artists, that's what all great artists aspire to do, or to be, or to create, is to get to that point where you're so genuine and sincere with
Yeah.
your experience that it's like impossible to deny. Everybody can connect to that.
Yeah.
Nobody's listening to Whitney Houston and being like, oh, she don't know what love is. No
Right.
one's listening to her thinking that.
Right.
Everyone leaves that being like, whew, that girl could sing. And why do we say that? What is it about her frequency that is resonating with us? It's not just the note. It's not just that she's hitting the notes,
Yeah. It's
it's
the
it's
spirit.
how. It's the how, it's the soul in it. It's
It's
it's the
so-
energy.
absolutely. And it's also the difference in, like, I feel like there, if technically a lot of people can sing, but very few have that, or not very few, but a lot of people those who like really are artists have that thing where it connects through the voice,
Mm.
because it's what connects all of us. It is in all of us. It is that source, because that's where art comes from. It flows through us as vessels, but it comes from the same place. Is that experience of a soul,
Mm.
and we're here experiencing the expansiveness of it in a lot of different iterations and reflections of one another, you know and when you're in a room and that love song is playing, everybody feels it for their own reason, their own story, and is singing it back with that same kind of fervor, because they feel it. It resonates on that deeper oneness that runs and courses through all of us.
Yeah, and I think there's a multiplicityness,
Yeah.
there's a there's a layer of dimensions and levels that we experience, and there's some people who will never know, what it's like to to hold the sort of note that you can hold, right? They'll never know what that's like.
Yeah.
They'll never know what it's what it produces for you to get to that point. Like, what in life um made you have to hold a note like that?
Yeah.
What are the things that your body, your condition, your voice um, cultivated that sort of note. You think about a certain bird singing, right? You think about birds singing. I mean, they have a
Yeah.
certain kind of way of singing because of the conditions of their bodies, their lives, their experiences, where they travel to or from. There are certain things that, yes, we all have something to give, something to create, something to offer in the world. Um, but some of us have really had to go through a specific set of experiences and circumstances unique to each of us, that elicits and produces the sort of expressions that we have and that we create. My
Yeah.
voice is not, is not separate of all the things that colored and textured it over the years of living. And so I think when people create, they're creating from, yes, their own, reality, and then they're also creating from um, who they had to be because of that reality, who they had to become, and what they had to do to survive those realities. And so I think sometimes we look at the products, we look at the thing that we all want to consume, and we don't really have a lot of compassion for what it took to get to that space,
Or
what
the
it
thing,
took to
yeah, the
nurture
person
it.
we're consuming, the person behind what we're consuming, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much there.
Yeah.
And yeah, cultivating the artistry in everybody. I look forward to, yeah, people being able to see themselves as artists in their approach towards life.
Amen. Well, I mean, it just takes continuing to be yourself and move with the light that you do, you know? And that light will continue to be more and more visible as you continue to express, you know?
Yeah, I think it takes that, and it takes a choice. It takes a choice. We all have to come down to the nitty gritty of choosing. But
Yeah.
I respect that we all have the ability to lean into the light and to learn from and use that which is called darkness. There's so much to grow from in that. There's so much beauty and brilliance and intimacy in the depths of darkness, and what it can create, what we can create
Yeah.
out of it. So I hope that, if
Yeah,
anything, people use all that is given to them.
I agree. Especially when we share that darkness with one another, it really just brings things to light, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, girl.
Yeah. It was the perfect send off, huh?
Yeah.
Exactly to the point.
I think we've done it. I think this conversation has gone deep enough for people to be like, what are they talking about?
Oh, they're gonna get it. They love this shit. This is the audience. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your insights and your beautiful words. I appreciate you so much, Mama. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being supportive. Thank you for even inviting me. And
Oh,
I'm honored to be in conversation with you, and I hope that you continue to grow and expand and live out, your best version of self.
amen. You too, my love.
All
And may
right.
we have a beautiful friendship through it all and watch each other grow.